Welcome to Silver Gulch, where justice and secrets collide on the edge of the frontier. Settle in for a story of danger, trust, and a love that breaks every rule. Rose Dalton's fingers froze over the telegraph key the instant Sheriff Emmett Thornton's shadow fell across her desk. She didn't look up. Couldn't afford to. Not when the message she just decoded could destroy what little remained of her family's name in Silver Gulch. The paper trembled slightly in her grip. Outside, the bank's foreclosure deadline ticked closer with every sunset. And the missing witness who could save Moonstone Ranch had just sent word he wouldn't testify after all. Emmett cleared his throat. His voice carried the rough edge of a man who'd ridden hard through the afternoon heat. Need to send a wire to the territorial marshal. Official business. Rose finally lifted her gaze. The sheriff stood in her cramped telegraph office with his hat in his hands, dust coating his dark jacket. Those tired gray-blue eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her pulse skip. She'd spent 6 months avoiding direct conversation with Emmett Thornton. 6 months, pretending she didn't notice how he watched her through the window when he thought she wasn't looking. 6 months trying not to remember the way he'd stepped between her and a drunk ranch hand last winter. His hand steady on his holster. His voice cold as January wind. The office smelled of ink and old wood, and the faint metallic tang of the telegraph equipment. Dust motes swirled in the shaft of amber light from the single window. Rose folded the telegram she'd just received and slipped it into her apron pocket before Emmett could read it. Her father's name, Dalton, still carried shame in this town. A forged land, claimed 3 years dead, had seen to that. Never mind that Rose hadn't known about the forgery until after her father's death. Never mind that she'd been working double shifts ever since, trying to prove the Daltons were honest people, trying to keep the ranch from slipping through her fingers when the bank came calling. "I'll send your wire." Rose kept her voice level. She reached for a fresh form. "What's the message?" Emmett stepped closer. The office shrank around them. He was a tall man, built solid from years in the saddle, and the space between the desk and the door wasn't meant for 2 people standing this near. Rose caught the scent of leather and sage and sweat. Her fingers tightened on her pen. "Request backup for auction proceedings," Emmett said quietly. "Moonstone Ranch. 2 days from now." Rose's heart stopped, then started again, hard and painful against her ribs. She set down the pen with deliberate care. "You're providing security for the bank. It's my job. Your job is to protect this town. Not help Eastern bankers steal land from families who've worked it for 15 years. Emmett's jaw tightened. The bank holds a legal note. If the note isn't satisfied by Friday noon, the property goes to auction. "I don't write the laws, Miss Dalton. I enforce them." Miss Dalton. As if they were strangers. As if he hadn't pulled her out of a flash flood last spring when she'd been stupid enough to try crossing the swollen creek on horseback. As if she hadn't felt his hands on her waist, strong and sure, lifting her onto solid ground while the water raged past. As if she hadn't seen something flicker in his eyes before he'd stepped back and told her, gruff and short, to be more careful next time. Rose stood. The movement brought her within a foot of him. She was slender, built for speed rather than strength, but she'd learned to stand her ground. "My father made mistakes. I'm paying for them. But Moonstone Ranch is mine by right, and I have a witness who can prove the original claim was valid before someone altered the paperwork. Where is this witness?" The question landed like a fist. Rose's throat tightened. That was the problem, wasn't it? The one man who could testify that her father's claim had been legitimate, that someone else had forged the duplicate documents, had disappeared 3 weeks ago. She'd been sending telegrams to every town within 200 miles. And today, finally, she'd gotten an answer. The answer now burning a hole in her apron pocket. He'll be here before the auction. Rose lifted her chin. You'll see. Emmett studied her face. She knew what he saw. A 23-year-old woman with ink-stained fingers and a faded shawl, running a telegraph office because it was the only respectable work available, and she needed every dollar to pay down the ranch debt. A woman whose father's scandal had made her a target for gossip, and worse. A woman who smiled too easily in public and carried a weight in her eyes that no amount of light conversation could hide. I hope that's true, Emmett said. For your sake. He turned toward the door. Rose's hand shot out before she could stop herself. Her fingers caught his sleeve. He froze. She felt the muscle tense beneath the worn fabric. Why do you care? Her voice came out rougher than she intended. You've made it clear you don't approve of my family. Emmett looked down at her hand on his arm. Then, at her face. Something moved behind his careful sheriff's mask. Something that made her breath catch. That's not what I said. You didn't have to say it. Everyone in Silver Gulch knows the Thorntons and the Daltons have been at odds since your grandfather accused mine of claim jumping back in '58. That was a generation ago. Tell that to your uncle. Rose dropped her hand. Tell that to the men who won't do business with me, because my last name is Dalton, and yours is Thornton. Emmett's expression hardened. My uncle doesn't speak for me, doesn't he? Then why are you here? Why are you the one enforcing the foreclosure when you could have sent Deputy Miller? Because. Emmett's voice dropped. Because I wanted to make sure you understood what's coming. Because I wanted to give you a chance to prepare. How thoughtful. Rose turned back to her desk. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the wood. Send your wire yourself, Sheriff. I have work to do. Silence stretched between them. Then, Emmett crossed to the desk in 2 strides. His hand came down beside hers, not touching, but close enough that she felt the heat of his skin. Rose, listen to me. The sound of her first name in his rough voice sent a jolt through her. She'd heard him use it exactly twice before. Once when he'd pulled her from the flood. Once when a rowdy cowboy had cornered her outside the mercantile. And Emmett had appeared from nowhere. His hand on his gun. His voice cold and final as he'd told the man to walk away and never look at her again. What? She didn't look at him. Couldn't. If your witness doesn't show. If the auction goes through. You need to have a plan. My plan is to keep my ranch. And if you can't. Rose finally turned her head. Emmett was close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Close enough that she could see he meant every word. Then I'll have failed. Again. Publicly. In front of everyone who already thinks I'm a liar's daughter trying to hold on to stolen land. Her voice cracked, despite her best effort. Is that what you wanted to hear? Emmett's hand moved. For one breathless instant, Rose thought he might touch her. His fingers hovered near hers on the desk. Then, he pulled back as if he'd been burned. No, that's not what I wanted. He straightened, put his hat back on. I'll send the wire from the saloon. He was gone before Rose could form a response. The door swung shut behind him. She stood alone in the fading light, her heart pounding, her hands still pressed flat against the desk where his had nearly covered hers. Outside, the storm was rolling in. Rose waited until the sound of Emmett's boots on the boardwalk faded. Then she pulled the telegram from her pocket and read it again, though she'd already memorized every word. James Holloway regrets he cannot travel to Silver Gulch at this time. Personal circumstances prevent testimony. Apologies for any inconvenience. Personal circumstances. Rose crumpled the paper in her fist. Someone had gotten to him. Someone who wanted Moonstone Ranch to go to auction. Someone who knew James Holloway was the only living witness to her father's legitimate claim. She grabbed her shawl and locked the office. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of rain and dust. Townspeople hurried toward shelter. Rose moved against the flow, heading for the edge of town where the livery stable sat beside the road that led out to the ranch. She found Samuel Tucker, the elderly stable owner, brushing down a gray mare. Sam had known her father, had been one of the few men in Silver Gulch who'd refused to believe the worst when the forgery came to light. "Sam, I need to borrow your fastest horse." Sam looked up, studied her face, then glanced toward the darkening sky. "Storm's coming in hard, Miss Rose. Not a good night for riding. I don't have a choice." Rose stepped closer, lowered her voice. "James Holloway sent word he won't testify. Someone scared him off. I need to get to his homestead before whoever it is finishes the job. That's a 6-hour ride in good weather." Sam set down the brush. "In this, you're looking at 8, maybe 10. And that's if the creek hasn't flooded the ford. Then I'd better leave now." Sam's weathered face creased with worry. "Your father would skin me alive for letting you ride out alone in a storm. My father's dead." Rose's voice came out harder than she meant. "And if I don't get Holloway's testimony, I'll lose everything he worked for. Everything he wanted me to have. Mistakes and all." The old man sighed. He walked to the tack wall and lifted down a saddle. "I'll get Starlight ready. She's sure-footed, and she's got the stamina. But Miss Rose..." He turned back. "If you're not home by dawn, I'm sending the sheriff after you. Don't." Rose grabbed the saddle before he could. "I'll do it myself. And don't tell Emmett Thornton where I went. He'll figure it out. Not if you keep quiet." Rose hauled the saddle toward Starlight's stall. "Please, Sam. I can't have him interfering. This is my fight." Sam didn't answer. But he didn't argue either. He helped her saddle the mare, checked the cinch twice, and handed her a rolled oilcloth slicker. Rose tied it behind the saddle and swung up. The mare shifted beneath her, sensing the coming storm. Straight out on the north road, then east at Miller's Rock. "You remember the way?" "I remember." Rose gathered the reins. "Thank you, Sam. Bring yourself back in one piece." "That's all the thanks I need." Rose nudged Starlight into a trot. They cleared the stable doors just as the first fat drops of rain began to fall. The street was nearly empty now. Most folks had sense enough to get inside before the storm hit in earnest. Rose pulled her shawl up over her head and urged the mare faster. She made it to the edge of town before she saw him. Emmett sat his big roan gelding in the middle of the road, rain dripping from his hat brim, his dark jacket already soaked. He'd positioned himself exactly where the north road split from the main street, blocking her path. Rose reined Starlight to a halt 10 feet from him. Her heart hammered. How long had he been waiting? How had he known? Turn around. Emmett's voice carried over the rising wind. Go home, Rose. Get out of my way. No. Rose's hands tightened on the reins. You have no right to stop me. I'm the sheriff. I have every right to keep citizens from doing something dangerous and stupid. Riding to Holloway's place isn't illegal. It is when you're planning to coerce a witness. I'm not. Rose's voice rose. I'm going to ask him why he changed his mind. I'm going to offer him safe passage back to Silver Gulch if he's been threatened. That's not coercion. That's justice. That's desperation. Emmett walked his horse forward until the animals stood nose to nose. And desperation makes people reckless. You'll get yourself hurt. Or worse. The rain poured down between them. Rose could barely see Emmett's face through the downpour, but she felt his gaze like a physical weight. She was soaked to the skin already. Her blouse clung to her shoulders. Her braid dripped water down her back. Starlight shifted nervously beneath her. Why do you care? Rose leaned forward in the saddle. Why does it matter to you what happens to me? You're enforcing the foreclosure. You're on their side. I'm not on anyone's side. Emmett's voice roughened. I'm trying to keep you alive, so you can watch me lose everything in 2 days. So you have a chance to fight another way. There is no other way. Rose's throat closed. She blinked rain from her eyes. Or maybe it wasn't all rain. This is it. This is my last chance. If I don't get Holloway to testify, the auction goes through, and Moonstone Ranch belongs to whoever has the most money. And we both know that won't be me. Then find another witness. Emmett's horse sidled closer. Get a lawyer. File an appeal. With what money? Rose nearly laughed. Do you know what lawyers cost? Do you know how long appeals take? The banknote is due Friday. That's 2 days. Not 2 months. Not 2 years. 2 days. Thunder cracked directly overhead. Both horses spooked. Rose controlled Starlight with her knees, barely keeping her seat. When she looked up again, Emmett had closed the distance between them. His horse stood pressed against hers. She could have reached out and touched his rain-soaked sleeve. You can't make this ride alone. Emmett's voice was rough. Not in this storm. Not at night. The creek will be up. The road will be mud. You'll break your neck before you get halfway there. Then come with me. The words were out before Rose could stop them. They hung in the rain-washed air between them. Emmett went very still. What? Rose's heart pounded so hard, she thought it might crack her ribs. You heard me. If you're so worried about me riding alone, then don't let me ride alone. Come with me. Help me get to Holloway before someone else does. Help me save my ranch. I can't. Emmett's jaw worked. I'm the sheriff. I can't be seen helping you pressure a witness. I'm not asking you to pressure anyone. Rose leaned closer. The rain ran in rivers between them. I'm asking you to make sure I get there safely. To be a witness yourself if Holloway has been threatened. Isn't that your job? Protecting people. Investigating threats. She saw the moment he wavered, saw the conflict flicker across his face, saw him glance back toward town, toward the sheriff's office and the badge that defined him. Then back at her. If we do this. His voice dropped so low she almost couldn't hear him over the storm. If I go with you, You follow my lead. You don't take risks. You don't confront anyone without me there. Understood. Understood. Rose's hands shook on the reins. So you'll come. Emmett muttered something that sounded like a curse. Then he wheeled his roan toward the north road. Let's go before I come to my senses. They rode hard into the teeth of the storm. The north road turned to soup within a mile. Starlight's hooves sucked at the mud with every stride. Rose kept the mare close to Emmett's roan, following his lead as he picked the firmest ground. Lightning split the sky. Thunder followed seconds later. The rain came down so heavy Rose could barely see 20 feet ahead. Her clothes were plastered to her skin. Water ran from her braid in a steady stream. But she didn't slow. Didn't complain. Emmett glanced back at her twice. Both times, she met his eyes and nodded. She could do this. She would do this. They reached Miller's Rock as full dark settled in. The landmark stood 12 feet high, a weathered stone pillar that had guided travelers for decades. Emmett reined in beside it. Rose pulled up, next to him, breathing hard. The horses blew and stamped. Creek's another 2 miles. Emmett had to shout over the wind. If it's flooded, we'll have to find another way across. How much time will that cost us? Could be an hour. Could be 3. Depends on how far we have to ride to find a safe ford. Rose's stomach nodded. Every hour counted. If they didn't reach Holloway's homestead before whoever had frightened him away came back. If they didn't get there before dawn, when the roads became passable again, and whoever wanted her to fail could move faster. We have to try the creek first. She raised her voice over the storm. We can't afford the delay. Emmett studied her through the rain, then nodded once. Stay close. If I signal you to stop, you stop. No arguments. No arguments. They pushed on. The road deteriorated further. Twice Starlight stumbled in hidden ruts. Twice Rose kept her seat through balance and sheer determination. Her thighs ached. Her hands were cramped on the reins. But she kept Emmett's broad shoulders in sight and followed where he led. The creek came into view as a dark, churning mass cutting across the road. Emmett dismounted and walked to the edge. Rose slid from Starlight's back and joined him. Her legs nearly buckled when her boots hit the mud. She steadied herself against the mare's shoulder. The water was high, higher than Rose had ever seen it. The usual ford was completely submerged. The current looked strong enough to sweep a horse off its feet. We can't cross here. Emmett turned to her. We'll have to head upstream. How far? Don't know. Could be a mile. Could be 5. Rose looked at the surging water, at the dark sky, at Emmett's set face. 5 miles upstream would add hours to their journey. Hours they didn't have. But trying to cross here could get them both killed. Wait. She grabbed his arm. There's an old logging bridge. 2 miles downstream. My father used to take me that way when we couldn't ford the creek. Emmett frowned. That bridge was falling apart 5 years ago. It might still hold. It's our best chance. Or it'll dump us both in the creek, and we'll drown. Rose met his eyes. Do you have a better idea? Silence. Then Emmett swung back into his saddle. 2 miles downstream. Lead the way. Rose mounted Starlight and turned the mare south. The creek road was barely visible in the darkness. Lightning provided brief flashes of illumination. Rose counted the landmarks in her head. The lightning struck cottonwood. The boulders shaped like a bear. The place where the creek bent west. And there, just visible in the next flash of lightning, the bridge. It was worse than Rose remembered. The wooden structure sagged in the middle. Several planks were missing. The railings had collapsed on one side. But it still spanned the creek, still offered a way across. Emmett dismounted and walked onto the bridge, tested the first few planks with his weight. They held. He moved further out. The bridge groaned, but didn't give way. He came back shaking his head. It might hold a horse, might not. We'll have to lead them across one at a time. I'll go first. Rose started forward. Emmett caught her arm. No, I go first. If it collapses, I'm heavier. Better it happens with me than you. If it collapses with you, I'm alone on the wrong side of a flooded creek in a storm. If it collapses with you. Emmett's grip tightened. His voice went rough. I'll have sent you to your death. The words hung between them. Rose stared up at him. Rain dripped from his hat brim onto her face. She could feel the tension in his hand on her arm. Could see something fierce and unguarded move behind his eyes. You care. She said it quietly. You really care what happens to me. Emmett's jaw tightened. He released her arm and stepped back. I'm the sheriff. It's my job to care. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. He turned away. And the answer doesn't matter. We need to cross this bridge before it washes out completely. So I'm going first, and you're going to wait here until I signal that it's safe. That's an order. Rose bit back her argument. Watched as Emmett led his roan onto the bridge. The horse balked at the first gap in the planks. Emmett spoke to it, low and steady, coaxed it forward. Step by step they crossed. The bridge swayed. Planks groaned. But it held. Emmett reached the far side and waved her forward. Rose gathered Starlight's reins and stepped onto the bridge. The wood felt soft beneath her boots, waterlogged. The mare's weight made the whole structure shudder. Rose moved carefully, testing each plank, avoiding the gaps. Halfway across, one board cracked beneath Starlight's hoof. The mare scrambled. Rose held tight to the reins, murmuring encouragement. Almost there. Just a few more steps. She reached solid ground and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Emmett was already mounted, waiting. Rose swung up onto Starlight, and they rode on. The storm began to ease as they put miles between themselves and Silver Gulch. The rain slowed to a drizzle. The wind dropped. By the time they reached the fork that led toward Holloway's homestead, the clouds were breaking apart, and moonlight spilled across the prairie in silver patches. There, Rose pointed. Holloway's place. The homestead sat in a clearing surrounded by cottonwoods. A small cabin with a barn. Smoke rose from the chimney. A single lamp burned in the window. Someone was home. Emmett raised a hand. We go in together. Let me do the talking. He's more likely to trust me. He's more likely to be holding a shotgun when he hears riders approach in the middle of the night. Emmett's voice was firm. I'm the law. That might keep us from getting shot. They rode into the clearing side by side. Before they reached the cabin, the door opened. A man stepped out with a rifle leveled at them. Halt, right there. James Holloway. I'm Sheriff Thornton from Silver Gulch. We need to talk. Holloway was a lean man in his 50s, weathered and hard-eyed. He didn't lower the rifle. I got nothing to say to you or anyone else from that town. Rose urged Starlight forward, despite Emmett's warning glance. Mr. Holloway, it's Rose Dalton. You knew my father. You were there when he filed his claim. You know the paperwork was legitimate. I don't know anything. Holloway's voice shook slightly. Now turn around and ride out before I put a bullet in your horses. Someone threatened you. Emmett's tone went cold and flat. Who was it? Don't know what you're talking about. You sent Rose a telegram saying you wouldn't testify. But 2 weeks ago, you agreed to come to Silver Gulch and tell the truth about her father's claim. What changed? Nothing changed. Holloway backed toward his door. I just decided it's not my business. Now get off my land. Rose dismounted. Emmett hissed her name, but she ignored him. She walked toward Holloway with her hands open and empty. Mr. Holloway, please. If I lose the ranch, I lose everything. My home. My father's legacy. Any chance of clearing his name. You're the only person who can prove he filed that claim, honestly. Please don't let whoever scared you win. Holloway's rifle wavered. His face twisted. Your father was a good man. What happened to him was wrong. But I got a family of my own. I got a daughter not much younger than you. And the men who came here made it real clear what would happen if I testified. What men? Emmett had dismounted as well. He moved to stand beside Rose. Give me names. Can't. They wore masks. How many? 3. Holloway lowered the rifle slightly. Came 2 nights ago. Told me if I went to Silver Gulch, my barn would burn. Maybe with my horses in it. Maybe with my daughter. Rose's stomach turned. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Now you do. So please, just leave me alone. We can protect you. Emmett stepped forward. Come back to Silver Gulch with us. You testify at the auction. I'll make sure nothing happens to your family. How? Holloway's voice rose. You're one man. You think you can stand against whoever wants that ranch bad enough to threaten murder. I'm the law. Emmett's hand rested on his holster. And I keep my word. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. All 3 of them turned toward the road. Rose's pulse spiked. 4 riders emerged from the tree line, moving fast. Even in the moonlight, she could see the bandanas covering their faces. Get inside. Emmett grabbed Rose's arm and pushed her toward the cabin. Holloway, get your family out the back. Go to your neighbors. Stay there until I come for you. What about you? Holloway's voice was tight with fear. I'll handle this. Emmett drew his revolver. Rose, inside. Now. Rose stumbled toward the cabin. Then stopped. Turned back. Emmett stood alone in the clearing, his gun raised, facing 4 armed men. He was outnumbered, outgunned. And he was standing there because of her. Because she'd asked him to come. Because he'd chosen to protect her, instead of enforcing the law that would have kept him safe in Silver Gulch. The riders reined in 20 feet from Emmett. The lead man's horse was a big black gelding. His voice came muffled through the bandana. Sheriff Thornton, didn't expect to see you here. Then you should have thought twice before threatening a witness in my jurisdiction. Emmett's gun didn't waver. Holloway's under my protection now. Anyone who wants to hurt him or his family goes through me. That's so. The lead rider's hand moved toward his holster. Seems like a long ride from Silver Gulch for a woman who's going to lose her ranch anyway. She won't lose it if Holloway testifies. He's not going to testify. Yes. Rose's voice rang out across the clearing. She stepped from the cabin doorway into the moonlight. He is. Emmett's head whipped around. His face went white. Rose, get back inside. No. Rose walked forward until she stood beside him. You want to stop James Holloway from testifying. You'll have to kill him. And you'll have to kill me. And you'll have to kill a sheriff who's seen your faces and will hunt you to the ends of the earth if you touch either of us. We're wearing masks. The lead rider's voice held amusement. I know who you are. Rose's voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through her. I recognize your horse. That's the black you bought from Sam Tucker's stable 3 months ago. You paid in silver coins. New minted. And you had a scar on your left hand shaped like a crescent moon. I saw it when you signed the bill of sale. She was bluffing. She had no idea who these men were. But she learned long ago that confidence could be a weapon when you had nothing else. The lead rider went very still. Then he laughed. Clever girl. But you're still going to lose. The auction's in 2 days. Even if Holloway testifies, you think anyone in Silver Gulch will believe him over the bank's paperwork? They will, if I'm there to back him up. Emmett's voice was cold iron. And they'll believe me. You'd testify for a Dalton. Against a Thornton, I'd testify for the truth. Emmett cocked his revolver. Now ride out. Or I start shooting. You shoot. We shoot back. And there's 4 of us. I only need 1 bullet for you. Emmett aimed directly at the lead rider's chest. Your friends might get me, but you'll be dead before you hit the ground. Question is, are you willing to die for whoever's paying you to rig this auction? The clearing went silent. The lead rider's horse shifted nervously. Rose could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Beside her, Emmett stood rock steady, his gun trained on the masked man's heart. Finally, the lead rider jerked his reins. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Emmett took a step forward. Because tomorrow, I'm riding back to Silver Gulch with Rose Dalton and James Holloway. And when we get there, I'm filing charges against anyone who interfered with a witness. So if you're smart, you'll disappear before I figure out who you really are. The 4 riders wheeled their horses and galloped toward the tree line. Within seconds, they'd vanished into the darkness. The sound of hoofbeats faded. Rose's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Emmett hadn't caught her. His arm came around her waist, strong and sure. She sagged against him, shaking. You shouldn't have done that. Emmett's voice was rough against her hair. You should have stayed inside. They would have killed you. Rose's words came out muffled against his chest. I couldn't let that happen. They could have killed you, but they didn't. She pulled back enough to look up at him. We're alive, and we have our witness. Emmett's arms were still around her. His face was inches from hers. In the moonlight, she could see every detail. The scar through his eyebrow, the line of stubble along his jaw, the way his eyes searched hers as if he was trying to memorize something he knew he'd lose. Rose. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. When you walked out into that clearing, when you stood beside me, I thought, What? Her hand came up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart pounding. What did you think? That I was about to watch you die? And that I'd never told you? Told me what? Emmett's hand came up to cup her face. His thumb brushed her cheek. His eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Then, he kissed her. The kiss was rough and gentle all at once. Desperate and careful. Rose's fingers curled into his wet jacket. She rose on her toes and kissed him back with everything she'd been holding inside for 6 months. All the longing, all the frustration, all the impossible want. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Emmett rested his forehead against hers. His hands stayed on her waist, as if he couldn't bring himself to let go. I can't do this. His voice was ragged. I'm the sheriff. You're a Dalton. My family. The town. I don't care. Rose's hands framed his face. I don't care about any of that. You should. Why? Rose pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Why should I care that your family hates mine? Why should I care what Silver Gulch thinks? They already believe the worst about me. Let them talk. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Rose's voice strengthened. You just risked your life for me. You stood against 4 armed men because you wanted to protect me. Don't tell me that doesn't mean anything. It means. Emmett closed his eyes. It means I've been a fool. For what? For thinking I could stay away from you. For thinking I could just do my job and ignore the fact that every time I see you, something in my chest tightens so hard I can barely breathe. Rose's heart stopped, then started again, fierce and wild. Say that again. Emmett opened his eyes. You heard me. I want to hear it again. He swallowed hard. I care about you, Rose Dalton. More than I should. More than is smart. Probably more than is sane. Good. Rose pulled him down and kissed him again. Because I care about you too. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. They stood in the moonlit clearing, holding each other, until Holloway cleared his throat from the cabin doorway. He'd emerged with his rifle lowered and a faint smile on his weathered face. Reckon I'll testify at that auction after all. Can't let a man who kisses a woman like that go back empty-handed. Rose laughed. It came out shaky, but genuine. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Holloway stepped fully outside. We still got to get back to Silver Gulch in one piece. And something tells me those boys aren't going to give up easy. They won't. Emmett's arm stayed around Rose's waist. But they're not going to stop us either. They spent what remained of the night in Holloway's barn. Too dangerous to ride back in darkness. Too risky to give the masked men another chance at ambush. Holloway insisted on standing first watch, while Emmett and Rose tried to get some rest in the hayloft. Rose sat with her back against the rough wooden wall, her damp clothes finally starting to dry. Emmett settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Below, the horses shifted in their stalls. A small fire burned in a metal brazier, casting flickering light. Tell me something. Rose's voice was quiet. Why did you really come with me tonight? Emmett was silent for a long moment. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you out here alone. Because I've spent 6 months watching you fight for your ranch with nothing but determination and a telegraph key. Because. He paused. Because you deserved someone on your side. I thought you weren't on anyone's side. I lied. Emmett turned his head to look at her. I've been on your side since the day I pulled you out of that flood, and you looked at me like I'd insulted you by helping. You did insult me. Rose smiled despite herself. You told me I was reckless. You were reckless. I was trying to check on the ranch. The creek was supposed to be low. It was running high enough to drown you, but it didn't. Rose's smile faded. You didn't let it. Emmett's hand found hers in the dim light. I never told you this, but that day scared me more than anything I'd faced. Seeing you go under. Not knowing if I'd reach you in time. You reached me. Barely. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And when I got you to shore, you stood up and walked away like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just what? Realized I couldn't lose you. Emmett's voice was rough. Right then, standing in the mud with you dripping wet and furious at me for interfering. That's when I knew. Knew what? That I was in trouble. That I cared too much. That I'd already crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Rose's throat tightened. Why didn't you say anything? Because you're a Dalton, and I'm a Thornton. Because my uncle would have disowned me. Because the whole town would have talked. Because Emmett's hand tightened on hers. Because I was a coward. You're the bravest man I know. Then I'm a brave coward. He smiled, faint and pained. I stood between you and those riders tonight, but I couldn't stand up to my own fear long enough to tell you the truth 6 months ago. You're telling me now, because I thought I was going to die tonight. And I didn't want to die without you knowing. Rose shifted closer. We didn't die. No. We didn't. And in 2 days, at the auction, I'm going to keep my ranch. And you're going to stand up there and tell everyone what really happened to my father's claim. Rose's voice strengthened. And after that, after all of it's over, and Moonstone Ranch is legally mine again, I'm going to ask you to come out there and see it. Really see it. The land my father loved. The place I've been fighting to keep. Emmett studied her face in the firelight. And what do I say when your neighbors ask why the sheriff is visiting the Dalton ranch? You tell them the truth. Rose met his eyes. You tell them you're courting me. Courting. Emmett's voice held wonder. You want that. Publicly. I want everything publicly. Rose's chin lifted. I'm done hiding. Done pretending. Done letting fear and old feuds dictate my life. So yes, I want you to court me. Properly. Openly. And if your uncle doesn't like it, he can. Rose Dalton. Emmett's lips twitched. Are you about to say something unladylike? Extremely unladylike. Rose grinned. But accurate. Emmett laughed. It was a low, warm sound that seemed to ease something tight in his chest. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Absolutely. Good. He pulled her closer. I like trouble. They sat together in the hayloft, shoulders touching, hands entwined, while the fire burned low and the night deepened toward dawn. Rose let her head rest against Emmett's shoulder. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt something like peace. The auction was still ahead. The fight wasn't over. But she wasn't facing it alone anymore. Dawn broke clear and cool. They rode back toward Silver Gulch with Holloway on a sturdy bay mare. The roads had dried enough to make good time. They reached the creek crossing by mid-morning. The water had receded overnight. The ford was passable again. As they approached Silver Gulch in the early afternoon, Rose saw riders waiting on the outskirts of town. Her stomach clenched. Then, she recognized Sam Tucker on his old gray gelding. And beside him, Deputy Miller. And beyond them, a dozen townspeople on horseback. "What's this?" Holloway's voice held suspicion. Emmett's eyes narrowed. He touched the butt of his revolver. "I don't know." Sam rode forward to meet them. His weathered face was grave. "Word got out last night that you rode after Rose, Sheriff. And word got out this morning that someone tried to stop you from bringing back a witness." "How did word get out?" Rose's mind raced. "We didn't tell anyone. I told them." Sam's voice was firm. "After you didn't come back by dawn, I went to the deputy. Told him everything. Figured you needed backup." Deputy Miller urged his horse closer. His young face was set with determination. "We're here to make sure nothing happens before the auction, Sheriff. Anyone who wants to threaten Mr. Holloway will have to go through all of us." Rose's eyes stung. She blinked hard. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, we did." A woman's voice. Rose turned to see Mrs. Chen from the general store. "Your father was a good man, Rose Dalton. What happened to him was wrong. It's past time someone stood up and said so." Other voices joined in. Agreement. Support. Rose looked at the faces around her. Not everyone in Silver Gulch, but enough to matter. Emmett straightened in his saddle. His voice carried across the group. "James Holloway is under the protection of this office until the auction concludes. Anyone who interferes will answer to the law. Is that understood?" A chorus of agreement. "Then let's get Mr. Holloway somewhere safe. Deputy Miller, I want 2 men on his door at all times. Sam, can you put him up at the livery? Back room's got a good lock." "Already cleared it out." Sam nodded. "He'll be safe there." They rode into Silver Gulch as a group. Townspeople stopped to stare. Rose kept her head high, riding beside Emmett. Let them look. Let them talk. She was done being ashamed of her name. Done apologizing for fighting for what was hers. Emmett escorted Holloway to the livery personally. Rose went with them. Sam settled the older man in the back room with a cot, a lamp, and supplies. Deputy Miller and another man took up positions outside the door. "Rose." Emmett caught her arm as they stepped back into the main stable. "We need to talk about tomorrow. The auction." "Yes." His face was serious. "The bank's bringing their own security. There'll be a crowd. It's going to be tense. I can handle tense. I know you can. But..." Emmett glanced around, then lowered his voice. "There's something you need to know. The man pushing hardest for your ranch to go to auction. It's my uncle, Calvin Thornton." Rose went cold. "Your uncle? He's the one who holds the banknote. He bought it from the original lenders 6 months ago. I just found out yesterday." Rose's mind spun. "Why? Why would he want my ranch?" "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." Emmett's jaw set. "And Rose, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever he says or does, I'm on your side, not his. He's your family. Your Emmett stopped, looked at her with those tired, honest eyes. You're more important. Rose's heart turned over. She reached up and touched his face, just briefly, aware they were in a public stable with people nearby. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get through tomorrow. Rose spent the night at the small boarding house where she kept a room above the telegraph office. She didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the auction block, saw the ranch going to the highest bidder, saw Emmett's uncle standing with a satisfied smile. But she also saw Emmett standing beside her in that clearing, saw him kiss her in the moonlight, saw the townspeople riding out to support her. She held on to those images like lifelines. Morning came too fast and too slow. Rose dressed in her best clothes, a dark blue dress with a high collar and long sleeves, her mother's cameo brooch, her hair braided and pinned up. She looked at herself in the small mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older, harder, ready. The auction was set for noon in front of the town hall. Rose arrived early. Already a crowd had gathered. She saw Calvin Thornton standing near the auctioneer's platform. He was a tall man, silver-haired, dressed in an expensive suit. He looked every inch the successful banker. Nothing like Emmett. Emmett stood on the opposite side of the platform in his sheriff's clothes. When he saw Rose, something crossed his face. Pride. Fear. Love. All mixed together. He gave her a tiny nod. She nodded back. Holloway emerged from the livery with Sam and Deputy Miller, flanking him. They made their way through the crowd to stand beside Rose. She gripped Holloway's arm. Thank you for coming. Couldn't let them win. Holloway's voice was steady. Your father deserved better. So do you. The auctioneer climbed onto the platform. A hush fell over the crowd. He began the proceedings with the standard language. Property description. Outstanding debt. Terms of sale. Rose's hands clenched at her sides. Then Calvin Thornton stepped forward. I'd like to address the crowd before bidding begins. The auctioneer hesitated, looked at Emmett. Emmett's face was stone, but he nodded once. Calvin Thornton climbed onto the platform. This ranch, Moonstone Ranch, has been the subject of controversy for 3 years. The previous owner, Thomas Dalton, filed a claim that was later discovered to be fraudulent. A duplicate claim. A forgery. The bank acted in good faith, but we cannot allow stolen land to remain in the hands of those who benefited from that theft. Rose's vision went red. That's a lie. Calvin turned to look at her. His expression was cold. The courts determined otherwise, Miss Dalton. The courts were wrong. Rose stepped forward. And I can prove it. She gestured to Holloway. This man, James Holloway, was present when my father filed his original claim. He witnessed the paperwork. He knows my father's claim was legitimate, and that someone else forged the duplicate documents to frame him. Calvin's face didn't change. One witness, after 3 years. How convenient. It would have been more convenient if your hired men hadn't threatened his family to keep him from testifying. Rose's voice carried across the silent crowd. But Sheriff Thornton stopped them. And now, Mr. Holloway is here to tell the truth. My nephew. Calvin's voice dripped contempt. Has allowed personal feelings to cloud his judgment. Your nephew. Rose's voice rose. Did his job. He protected a witness from intimidation. He upheld the law, which is more than you can say. How dare you? How dare you? Rose climbed onto the platform, faced Calvin Thornton directly. You bought my family's debt. You pushed for foreclosure. You sent men to threaten Holloway. All because you want Moonstone Ranch for yourself. Why? What's so important about that land? Calvin's eyes narrowed. You have no proof of any threats. I have Holloway's testimony. I have the sheriff's word. And I have this. Rose pulled a folded paper from her pocket. A telegram that arrived this morning. From the Territorial Land Office, confirming that my father's claim was filed 6 months before the forged duplicate, confirming that the forgery was investigated 3 years ago and traced back to a clerk who worked for. She paused. The Silver Gulch Bank. Gasps from the crowd. Calvin's face went white, then red. That's absurd. The clerk's name was Martin Reeves. He disappeared the same week my father died. Rose's voice shook, but held firm. You knew about the forgery. You covered it up. And when my father discovered what happened, you made sure he couldn't expose you. The crowd erupted, voices shouting. Calvin Thornton backed away from Rose, his hands raised. I had nothing to do with your father's death. He died in an accident. Did he? Rose's eyes burned. Or did someone make sure he had an accident after he started asking questions about Martin Reeves? That's defamation. Calvin turned to the auctioneer. Stop this immediately. No. Emmett's voice cut through the chaos. He climbed onto the platform. Stood beside Rose. I want to hear what she has to say. You'll regret this, boy. Maybe. Emmett's voice was cold. But I'll regret it more if I don't. Calvin looked between them. At Rose standing defiant. At Emmett, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. At the crowd watching with hostile eyes. He pointed a shaking finger at his nephew. You're finished in this town. Then I'm finished. Emmett's voice didn't waver. But Rose Dalton keeps her ranch. You have no authority to. Yes, I do. Emmett pulled a folded document from his jacket. This is an order from the territorial judge suspending the foreclosure pending investigation into the original land claim. It was issued this morning based on new evidence. The auction is canceled. Rose's knees nearly gave out. She grabbed Emmett's arm to steady herself. You. When? Last night. Emmett's voice was quiet. After we got back. I sent a telegram to the judge with everything Holloway told us. He issued the order at dawn. The crowd erupted again. This time, in cheers. Calvin Thornton stood alone on the platform, his face a mask of rage and defeat. He pointed at Emmett one more time. You've chosen her over your own blood. Yes. Emmett's voice rang out clear. I have. Then you're no nephew of mine. Good. Emmett turned away from him. Turned to Rose. His expression softened. The ranch is yours. Legally. Permanently. No one can take it from you now. Rose stared at him. At this man who'd risked everything. His family. His position. his place in Silver Gulch. All for her. All because he decided she mattered more than fear. She kissed him. Right there on the platform in front of the entire town. Threw her arms around his neck and kissed him like he was air, and she'd been drowning. The crowd went wild. When they finally broke apart, Emmett was smiling. A real smile that crinkled the corners of his tired eyes. Well, I guess that answers any questions about our intentions. Rose laughed. It came out shaky and fierce and joyful. I told you I wanted everything publicly. So you did. Emmett pulled her close. His voice dropped so only she could hear. And what do you want now? Rose looked up at him. At the man who'd stood beside her when everyone else had walked away. Who'd believed in her when belief cost him everything. Who'd kissed her in a moonlit clearing and promised he'd never stop fighting for her. I want you. Rose said it simply, honestly. I want you to come out to Moonstone Ranch with me right now. I want to show you the land, the house, the life I've been fighting to keep. And then, her voice steadied. I want you to stay. Stay. Court me. Properly. Publicly. For as long as it takes. And then. Rose's heart pounded. Marry me. Make it permanent. Build a life out there with me where no one can tell us we don't belong together. Emmett's eyes searched hers. Rose Dalton, are you proposing to me? I am. Rose's chin lifted. Do you accept? Emmett's answer was another kiss. Longer this time. Deeper. A promise, and a claim, and a yes wrapped into one breathless moment. When they broke apart, the whole town was cheering. Sam Tucker shouted from the crowd, "About time, Sheriff." Mrs. Chen called out, "We'll plan the wedding." Deputy Miller grinned. "Does this mean I'm acting sheriff while you're on your honeymoon?" Emmett laughed against Rose's hair. "We haven't even had a first proper supper together, and they're planning the honeymoon. Let them plan." Rose smiled up at him. "I don't care what they say anymore. Neither do I." Emmett's arms tightened around her. "All I care about is you." They left the platform together. Walked through the cheering crowd, hand in hand. Holloway clapped Emmett on the shoulder. Sam hugged Rose so hard he lifted her off her feet. Deputy Miller promised to handle things in town, while Emmett took a few days to help Rose settle affairs at the ranch. Calvin Thornton had disappeared into the crowd. Rose didn't care. He'd lost. She'd won. And more importantly, she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Someone who saw past her name, past her father's mistakes, past the shame and the struggle. Someone who saw her. They rode out to Moonstone Ranch that afternoon. Just the two of them. The land spread before them in rolling hills and green valleys. The ranch house stood at the end of a long drive, modest but solid. Rose's father had built it with his own hands, had planted the cottonwoods that now shaded the porch, had dug the well and raised the barn and fenced the pastures. Rose dismounted and stood looking at it all. Emmett came to stand beside her. His hand found hers. "It's beautiful." His voice was quiet. "I can see why you fought so hard. It's home." Rose's throat was tight. "It's all I have left of him. All I have left of my family." "No." Emmett turned her to face him. "It's not all you have. You have me now, and I'm not going anywhere." Rose looked up at him, at this man who'd broken every rule to save her ranch, who'd stood against his own family, who'd kissed her on a public platform, and made his choice clear for everyone to see. "Promise." Her voice came out a whisper. "I promise." Emmett pulled her close. "I promise I'll be here for every sunrise, every storm, every hard day and every good one. I promise I'll build this life with you. And I promise," his voice roughened, "that I will love you until the day I die, and probably long after that." Rose's eyes filled. "That's quite a promise, Sheriff Thornton. It's the only one that matters." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "And you, Rose Dalton, what do you promise?" Rose smiled through her tears. "I promise to be trouble, to challenge you, to keep you on your toes. I promise to fight beside you when things get hard. And I promise," she rose on her toes to kiss him, "to love you with everything I have, publicly, permanently, for the rest of my life." "Good." Emmett swept her up in his arms. She laughed in surprise as he carried her toward the porch. "Then, I'd say we have an understanding." "What are you doing?" "Starting our life together." He set her down gently on the porch steps, sat beside her, put his arm around her shoulders. "Right here. Right now." No more waiting. They sat together on the porch of Moonstone Ranch as the sun sank toward the horizon. The land stretched gold and green around them. The mountains rose in the distance. The wind carried the scent of sage and grass and possibility. Rose leaned against Emmett's solid warmth and felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Safety. Home. Not just the ranch, though that mattered, but this. The feeling of being chosen, of being seen, of being loved without conditions or shame. Emmett pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "What are you thinking about?" Rose smiled. "I'm thinking about how I spent 6 months trying not to fall in love with you. How'd that work out?" "Terribly." Rose turned to look at him. "I was completely unsuccessful." "Good." Emmett's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Because I spent 6 months trying not to fall in love with you too. And I failed spectacularly. So we're both failures. The best kind." He kissed her again, slow and sweet and full of promise. The sun set. Stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. Rose and Emmett stayed on the porch, talking quietly, making plans. He'd keep his badge, at least for now. She'd keep running the telegraph office. They'd split their time between town and the ranch until after the wedding. Then they'd figure out the rest together. But tonight, this moment, was theirs alone. No threats, no auctions, no family feuds. Just two people who'd fought their way through fear and doubt and old wounds to find each other on the other side. Rose rested her head on Emmett's shoulder and watched the stars appear. Somewhere in Silver Gulch, people were probably still talking. Probably still shocked that a Thornton and a Dalton were together. Probably already planning the wedding and speculating about the future. Let them talk. Rose didn't care anymore. She had everything she needed right here. Emmett's voice rumbled against her ear. Happy. So happy. Rose turned her face up to his. The starlight caught in his eyes. Thank you. For everything. For coming with me. For standing beside me. For choosing me. Always. Emmett kissed her once more. Then smiled that rare, genuine smile. Now and forever, Rose Dalton. You're stuck with me. Rose laughed. The sound floated out over the ranch land, light and free. Good. Because I have plans for you, Sheriff Thornton. Oh. His eyebrows rose. What kind of plans? The kind that involve a whole lot of trouble and a lifetime of adventures. Rose's eyes sparkled. Think you can handle that? With you. Emmett pulled her closer. I can handle anything. And he was right. Together, they could face whatever came next. The gossip. The challenges. The hard work of building a life from scratch. Because they'd already survived the worst. They'd stood together against threats and fear and the weight of old grudges. They'd fought for each other when it mattered most. The rest was just details. Rose and Emmett sat on the porch of Moonstone Ranch as the night deepened around them, holding each other under a sky full of stars. And for the first time in 3 long years, Rose Dalton felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Home. Safe. Loved. And ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Because tomorrow, she wouldn't face it alone. She'd have Emmett beside her. Her partner. Her protector. Her love. The man who'd broken every rule to save her ranch and stolen her heart in the process. And that, Rose thought as Emmett's arms tightened around her, was worth more than all the silver in Silver Gulch.